This is a call to order of the, what's that, Frank? This is a call to order for the November 18th Human Services Committee meeting. Once again, to start off the meeting, I'd like to open up courtesy of the floor. Seeing no one present, I will just have the record show that we had no one come forward, and close courtesy of floor. And first thing that's on the agenda for discussion is review of 2011 Graysdale's private payer rate. Mr. Marcus is here, and there were some initial questions I had prior to tonight's meeting, and Mr. Marcus has answers for everything and explain why we're here today to discuss this.
Okay. Private, private payers only account for probably less than 5% of the total residents at Graysdale. But the amount that we charge them is important because it helps set what we can collect from Medicaid and Medicare. Essentially, the way we got to this rate was we took the total budget for 2011, divided it by the 692 beds in Graysdale. If you remember, we have 33 beds, you might call it mothballed. Our official count is 725, but we removed 33 beds but have not decertified them. Okay? So when I talk about the full count, I don't use 725, I use 692.
Okay, and you're counting the number of beds, not necessarily how many were our capacity by license.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, so the actual number of beds is 692. And so that's the reason for the increase, because of removal of the 33 beds. And then you take it and you divide it by 365 for days in the year, and that's how you get to 260. So another way to look at it is for a private pay person, it'll go from $91,250 a year to $94,900 a year.
Excellent. Mr. Marcus, you brought to my attention that this was not normally brought to the Human Services Committee, and in the past it usually went straight through and went right to council, correct?
Yeah, I mean, and council usually didn't ask any questions. I anticipated questions tonight only because Graysdale right now has questions on everything.
Okay. When I start thinking about it, I don't think the Human Services Committee was even functioning last year about this time. If I remember, it'd been out maybe 14 months prior to it being restarted back up in January.
It wasn't
that long?
Nah.
Okay,
Nah, it was less than a year.
So this is the first time it's come to the Human Services Committee?
Even when Diane was on council and the committee was active, I don't remember this coming before the committee. Okay. I think it was just viewed as, sort of a pro forma item and voted on.
Okay, it sounds kind of cut and dry, but I still have some questions. Mr. Dowd, do you have any questions about the payee rate?
No, really don't.
Right.
Well, if you don't mind, just so that you understand that, as I say, that Medicaid and Medicare must be the lowest rates. Okay, they will not have any rate below them. So if for example, if we charge private pays $100 a day, then Medicaid, we could only accept $100 a day from Medicaid. So Medicaid right now, our rate is $210 a day. So you always want to keep the private pay rate above the Medicaid rate. Medicare is a little more complicated because it's an all-inclusive rate and includes many other things like medications, and therapies. But that's $350 a day. But it can be higher than the private pay because it's an all-inclusive rate.
Because the private payer is basically just paying room and board, and then any services other than that are additional?
Not services like medications and therapies, but a lot of nursing homes, we have an all-inclusive rate.
Okay.
So like one of the questions that is occasionally asked by council members is, how does our rate compare to other nursing homes? And it's difficult to determine that because it's hard to get apples-to-apples comparison, because they might say, well, our rate is $225 a day, but that only includes one meal. If you want 3 meals a day, then it's an extra whatever, things like that.
I see.
If you want clean linens every day, it's so much more, and so on.
Any questions, Mr. Dowd?
I mean, in essence, the $260 a day at roughly $95,000 a year reasonably divides into our budget. I mean, we're looking at...
That's exactly the way. If you take the total budget anticipated for 2011,
Right.
you divide it by 692 actual beds that can be occupied right now, and then divide it by 365, you should get 260. I didn't check the math.
Well, I mean, it's close. It's
Yeah.
close enough for government work. But, you know, I guess my sense is you surely wouldn't want to charge less than what would be our, you know, effective costs.
Correct.
Because I wouldn't think so.
Well, that kind of leads me into the next question. The 692 beds would assume that we had a customer in every single one of those beds. We typically do not have 692 guests, do we?
Not right now.
What about what would probably be the average, maybe rolling average, maybe over the last 5 years? Maybe
Oh, I wouldn't use last 5 years, because
Last 2
then
years, yeah.
then it
because
would be...
the number of beds were taken out of service and everything for
Right.
maintenance.
We lost 65 beds in the CCAP project. The whole idea of the project was to make the entire building Medicare eligible, which it was not before that. And by removing those beds, number one, the whole building became Medicare eligible, but we lost 65 beds. So we originally, many years ago, the occupancy was 790. Then it dropped to 725. And now, what in essence has happened is that there are beds with the increased amount of medical equipment. It is difficult to get the beds, the furnishings, and the equipment in some of these rooms for the number of beds that were there. So by removing these beds, we made the rooms more appealing to potential residents.
Okay, the number, the 260 per day, basically, as you already stated, was divided over 692 beds. So technically, we're trying to divide it amongst beds that we probably won't ever fill. And so I'm trying to figure out also the benefit of that, because that cost needs to be made up elsewhere, right? So what ends up is $260 a day the max reimbursement rate that we have for Medicaid and Medicare?
Now, Medicaid right now is $210.
And then the Medicare was the $350.
Yes.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out if we actually took it and divided it by the actual number of beds we had occupied, then our daily rate would have went up and it would minimally impact. And then I always like the term of rebates. The private payer would get a rebate. So
I don't think you really want to do that.
Couldn't do that. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out a way I understand you guys are the experts and everything, and the information you provided, how we can maximize what we can get back from Medicaid and Medicare.
By doing what we're asking you to do tonight.
And that's the only option. We can kind of
Right.
work that number a little higher to try to get back from Medicaid, Medicare.
The way to do that would be by investing more money in the facility, and obviously we aren't going to do that right
We have
now.
no money, yeah.
To do things like a ventilation therapy and other more advanced treatments, because then your case mix index goes up, and that improves your
And the
reimbursement.
max we can get out of Medicaid is 210.
A day, correct.
The max we can get. So, I mean, no matter what we do,
Well, other than...
without doing ventilation or
Yeah, performance
rehab.
payments,
Yep.
and, yes, those would be the other things that we could do. But as far as our base rate from Medicaid, we're going to get, or we have received a 1% increase in our rate as part of the state passage of the budget.
So really then the Medicaid forces us to operate at a loss for the Medicaid.
Yes. And that's based on, and don't forget, I think Dauphin County was talking about last night and the night before at 60-some% Medicaid. We're usually around 85% Medicaid.
Which tells us, in some regard, for the private payer, we're not the place of choice.
Less than 5%.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mike. That was a number that Ross had put out beforehand, said that this is affecting less than 5% of our guests there.
And then the other 10% would be Medicare and private insurances.
And I guess I'm not so much concerned about it being 5% as I am saying that it's not the place of choice. The people who can pay, by and large, are going someplace else.
Correct.
Can't argue with the numbers. But
And that goes back, I mean, we still hear Graysdale referred to as the poorhouse.
And I think that's one of the reasons we're not the place of choice.
Sure. Reputation.
well, also we
Perception
don't
is reality.
advertise. I know everybody else says marketing and everything, but it's the image once again. That right there, the word of mouth advertisement doesn't cost us anything. And it's information that's shared. I mean, even within the county, every time I drive by there, all it says is one word, Graysdale. It doesn't say nursing rehabilitation. Even if someone makes a wrong turn on the road, they don't know what's that big tall building there. We don't even market it on our own property. But one of the things that have come to mind from talking to other nursing homes, especially ones that have changed hands, is they aggressively recalculate their CMI. Is our CMI, case mix index, I mean, how is that calculated? How do we calculate it?
Well, that's one of the misperceptions. Mrs. McHale will refer to that we stopped using the outside agency. We did not stop. We just changed the firm that we used. We aggressively try to get our case mix index as high as it possibly can, and we bring in someone from the outside to help us report everything that we are doing with every resident to maximize the case mix index, which then maximizes income.
When's the last time that we had our CMI adjusted or calculated?
I think it's done, don't quote me, it's done several times a year. We do not do it. Somebody else, we input the data, they calculate it, but I believe it's quarterly. But don't hold me to that.
And of course, you said if we change our services and everything, we can change our CMI so that we can get a better Medicaid reimbursement rate. Was there anything that was looked at as far as that could have been like almost very minimal investments that could have changed our reimbursement rate? Especially since
Sure,
Medicaid's at a loss.
One of the things that we did the beginning of 2010, even before the study was done, before 2010, we never would accept people who needed intravenous therapies. And so that was just recently done. And that helps your case mix index.
And I've gotten feedback from some of the hospitals. They said they were glad to hear that, because anytime anybody was still under some type of just even fluid therapy, right, Graysdale was completely out for an option up until this year. So they were glad to hear that at least another option came on. And that changed our CMI as well?
Yeah, that would help our CMI.
Now, that's already been factored in since you said quarterly, and we've been doing this for about a year now.
Yes.
Okay.
Our case mix index, if you were to go back to the study, and I didn't bring it with me, so I can't refer to a page number, but you may remember there was a chart in there that compared our case mix index to one of the author of the studies, one of their facilities, and it showed how their case mix index started around where ours was, maybe a little lower, but then it surpassed ours. But the reasoning was they had more of the advanced treatments than what we have.
I also
So,
heard
just if you don't mind, just to finish the thought, one of the things that holds back our case mix index is Alzheimer's, dementia, because there's low treatment involved. It's mostly just basic care. that pulls down our case mix index. So that actually hurts us. But it is a need. And as a county facility, we meet that need.
That's where I was going.
Sorry.
It's our methodology that might be approaching, since most county facilities where the term warehousing comes up quite a bit when I talk to them. We seem to be more into not rehabilitation or recently therapy or medication or oncology or dialysis units like other facilities are. So because they have a mix and more advanced, their CMI would be higher, and they would be seeing much greater than the 210 that's quoted here as far as Medicaid.
It's not, the 210 would not change. It would be the supplemental payments that you also get
Okay.
by having a higher case mix index and things like that. But our base rate would not, the 210 is going to be 210. It's cost of living adjustments that will impact the $210. So like the 1% increase, to be honest, I should have asked whether the 210 included the recent 1%. I'm guessing it does, but I'm not positive. But the point is that you used the example of dialysis. That's another good example of something that if we were staying in the nursing home business, we were going to look at. The potential of offering on-site dialysis. We do provide an awful lot of therapy at the facility. I think I would take exception with the term warehousing, but it is not as advanced as in some nursing homes because we have not made the capital investments necessary.
I see.
So, Ross, if we had a Medicaid-eligible patient, resident, who needed ventilation therapy or needed dialysis, those would be additional costs that the state would absorb, or are we locked into the 210?
Other funding sources would pay for those. For example, Medicare would pay for some of that and things of that nature. And if they don't have Medicare, it's all Medicaid, you get reimbursed more for therapies. The 210 is your base rate of just taking care of the resident. It does not include the supplementals.
So does that become then a direct reimbursement? Or since we're already losing $50 a day per head as a Medicaid patient, resident, and let's presume somebody needed dialysis 3 days a week or 4 days a week, and our direct cost, presuming we were doing dialysis on site, was an additional $1,000 a month.
Our direct cost goes up now because what we are doing is we are taking the person to the dialysis. They are getting the payment, but we are getting them ready. We are then moving them back to...
But the dialysis unit is getting paid, not Northampton County.
Exactly.
So if we are, in fact, let's presume it costs us $1,000 a week, our cost, capital and operating, to provide dialysis to a resident.
Okay.
$4,000 a month. Would Medicaid or Medicare reimburse us the entirety of that, or would in fact we get does that become a losing proposition for us as well? It improves cash flow, but we're still underwater?
No, I think we would. I know that the more Medicare services we provide, those are our money makers. They help us. Medicaid, I'm not sure. I'm sorry, I don't know that level of detail. But if we were staying in the nursing home business, and if we were to be given, X number of months or years to turn it around, we would come in with an aggressive capital program to make improvements, to get us in the position to compete.
And since there's a difference between Medicare at $350 and now our proposed private payer rate of $260, because the private payer rate is still lower, are we still eligible for the 350?
Yes, because that's the all-inclusive rate.
Now, 350 is the cap right now for Medicare. So we're okay as far as it is close enough, apples to apples and everything.
Yes.
And this formula where it's just the budgeted divided by the number of available beds rather than actually occupied beds is what's been used in the previous years going back?
It is my understanding, yes.
Okay. If there's any other questions? I think we covered it, Ross.
More amply than probably in the
Years
last
and years
5 years.
I ask a lot of questions. I
That's
apologize.
it. No, that's okay. No, that's fine. I think it's great that you're asking questions.
Then I guess what we want to do is see if, for the resolution, if there's a recommendation, open the floor for a motion, since there's only two of us here, a motion for recommendation or not a recommendation for tonight's council meeting?
There's always a choice, but it seems to me that the reasonable choice is to say 260 and keep going.
I was thinking actually calculate by the number of occupied beds rather than the actual number of available beds.
That then becomes a floating number that changes weekly.
Well, that's why I was talking about maybe we should go with some type of rolling average going back so many years or anticipated census.
No, I guess, let me play the other side of the argument. We're looking at 6 months, and I think we can go through a lot of gymnastics, but in the end, I'm not sure what the total impact is. In some regard, the total budget is assessed on what our experience is. You're budgeting on 692 beds, but quite frankly, we know we're not going to have 692 beds. We're going to have 625 beds or 645 beds occupied on a rolling average, so our costs.
Actually, a lot of our budget was based on having the one wing closed, which is still included in the 692. So as far as staffing is concerned, we actually budgeted on probably around 650.
That's what I'm saying. The budget's based upon 650 rather than 692.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Exactly.
in fact, the private payer rate at 260 is,
Below what our actual costs are to operate per bed, occupied bed.
no. Because really what he's saying is you got a budget of $60 million, which is in essence what he anticipates spending at Graysdale this year. Whack that up by 365 and 625, that's 690 beds. I'm not sure it makes an enormous impact on us.
No.
I
The
appreciate.
response to the lady last night, even going up to $95,000 a year, maybe it's a more rational number, but
Also, I have to look at it this way. Our intentions are is to try to get as much money back from the state and the federal government, and the 260, from my understand, will suffice in that, and it minimally impacts.
Yes.
It's one of those, the needs of the greater outweighs the needs of the few, and it seems like that number, we can argue on what the number is or anything, but its motive is being met. It's our intentions to get as much reimbursement, and the 260 would get us there.
Exactly, and I do not know to what extent private pays like a Blue Cross or Blue Shield, whatever, would look at how we determine the rate. And so I would encourage you to just stick with the formula because it is one that is accepted.
Well, what I'm wondering too is if the private payers' insurance would pay
That's
like
what he's talking about.
$340 a bed, that would be 5% of our occupants that we might be undercharging as well.
But I don't believe
They
it
don't
is
believe
that
so.
simple.
Okay. Other facilities, I'm not too sure. Do they only set their rate once a year?
Don't know.
Don't know. Okay.
Don't know.
in some regard, Blue Cross doesn't care what our fee is. They'll tell you what they're going to pay.
Exactly.
It's just like they do for
900-pound
physicians. And so
gorilla.
if you and I go into the hospital without insurance, he may be $4,000 a day, but if I go in with insurance, the fee is $500 a day, and that number is a odd number anyway.
Yes.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move we get $260 a day.
I'll second it. All in favor?
I guess both of us.
Acclamation. Thank you very much, Ross.
Sure.
And then, of course, that will be recommended to council tonight. And the next topic was discussion of Human Services Department year in review. I was wondering if there was a PowerPoint presentation or anything?
I'm sorry?
Any PowerPoint presentation?
No.
Any action photos?
No.
Not.
No.
I hope not.
I think the big thing to talk about is I did jot some notes about what happened this year. Obviously, the big events included things like us preparing for the closure of the state hospital, and other activities. Obviously, we had a great increase, as you've heard, monthly, a great number of new intakes, and also not only an increase in intakes, but an increase in the difficulty of the cases. More desperate situations that are being faced by residents because of the state of the economy. But really, to me, the big issue is the future of human services, because with the state being in tough financial circumstances, it's pretty clear that if we thought we were underfunded before, we haven't seen anything yet. Because whether it be federal funding that goes to the state and then comes to us, or state monies allocated by the legislature and the governor, it's not going to be a good couple of years. So we are going to be seeing probably some substantial cuts each of the next few years.
Wow.
So that's really the big picture. And people have asked me, why am I okay with selling Graysdale? It's because all the numbers trend the wrong way. I mean, someone said it last night, it's almost as if DPW is encouraging counties to get out of the nursing home business.
And that's the feedback I've gotten. And some of the people say the state only has so much money. So what ends up is they figured, instead of paying everybody equal, let's pay the ones that are the most squeakiest wheel. How many county-run facilities do we have in the county versus private-run facilities? Apparently they can squeak a little louder than we can.
Well, I'm sure some of the larger nursing home companies have, staff to lobby.
Lobbyists.
Yeah.
Yes. And they have some coalitions and professional organizations that go out there just as much as we have CCAP. And
I think that the whole movement in human services, one of the things that'll be interesting, because I've been talking to some folks on long-term care insurance, and a lot of people are saying, I don't want to go to Graysdale, I don't want to go to Country Meadows. I want to be at home.
Exactly.
So, the great trending, as I see it, I understand the market, is to say it's cheaper in the long run to provide the insurance, and it's cheaper in the long run to provide the care, to bring somebody in.
And that's what Medicaid and Medicare want, too. That's another one of those trends. You're absolutely
Happening in
right.
residential youth care. I mean, frankly, the market of that is changing. And,
Exactly.
It's short-term intensive treatment followed by long-term in-home because it's just too expensive. And that's where this market's going.
And I think you're going to see even more of that because of the pressure that will be put on Medicaid and Medicare to get their costs under control.
The choices that my wife and I are making, to say, would I rather be taken care of at home for as long as I can be, as opposed to going to a nursing facility, as good or bad as it may be, I'd rather be at home.
Right.
I understand. It's like, it seems to be the trend right now. I like to believe that's pretty far off for me to decide, but I do see other people making decisions.
Could be tomorrow.
Could be. I know my next door neighbor. She's up there in age, and what ends up is she stayed home instead of going to a nursing home, and she has some problems that are associated with age and everything. So I end up mowing the front of her yard to make sure it looks all nice and even with my yard, and we all just, when it snows, her driveway gets cleared out before mine does, because I'm already home, and her son comes over when it snows really bad to stay with her, to make sure the lights go out or anything. She's fine. So even neighborhoods are trying to pitch in and try to help each other, as well as, our elderly citizens.
I think the model, sometimes we tend to follow the model of the past 6 months as opposed to the model of the next 2 years. So, long story short, I think the way the state money is going, just had lunch with Bob Mensch. I don't see anything in the future that tells me that.
No, actually, I think Ross's little speech about our declining finances was actually optimistic, because it could be far declining or far worse.
It could be, but I try not to sound too doom and gloom, because usually those don't hold out to be accurate, but in this case it might be.
And we always have to prepare for the worst, of course. That's and since we only visit this, some of the human services funding once a year, and amendments to the year when the state comes down with funding. I guess it's best to be optimistic as far as we'll try to provide the best services at the cheapest, and try to keep our expenses down. As far as the human services meetings and everything, we covered every one of the departments every month for the past, it's like 11 months here, since now we're at 11th month. And it would have been mostly informational. Is there any type of goals that we want to set forward as far as for the Human Services Committee meeting going forward for next 2011?
Well, you tell me. It's up to County Council to determine what it wants the Human Services Committee's role to be in Graysdale. But certainly there will be opportunity for involvement during the first 6 months, as far as, you'll have the RFP results. You'll have a lot of negotiations going on. You may want reports on that sort of thing. Once the sale is the actual document is developed, obviously county council's going to want to be briefed on the details of the document, and you may want that over several meetings. You may not even want to be able to try to absorb that all in one meeting.
See, I made a mistake. The wife being in the medical field, me pre-hospital field, and then the power industry for decades, it seems like. The idea of taking time off for Christmas seemed odd, so I thought we had a later council meeting, like right up into the beginning of Christmas, and we would have seen the RFP within like a day or two, but it seems like the RFP will be back the 15th, and most of our county meetings are done by that time.
Correct.
So I think there's some special meetings that we're having as far as like trying to figure out who met the qualifications of the RFPQ, and I've never been in the business of selling a nursing home or potentially leasing, so I'm not really sure what exactly the timelines are. I believe we can schedule something for probably January to review some more information.
I don't know. That's why I think you may want to have conversations among yourselves to figure out how that's going to be done.
Okay.
Do they want to delegate that to the Human Services Committee? Are you going to do it as a committee of the whole, all 9 of you? How exactly is that going to be done?
And in January, we reorganize as well, so we don't know if the faces on the committees will be the same as well.
Correct. So that's...
I guess my thought is that the danger of having 9 of us review the RFPs is, we don't come at it with any particular level of expertise.
Right.
Come at it more with ignorance than we do with fact, and I think that's dangerous. I think that there would be a culling of them. I don't know. Culling may take them down from 4 to 3 or 2 to 1. I don't know. I don't know how many we will get.
I'm hoping we're going to get more than
But I'm hoping
4.
we'll get several. I'm hoping we'll get quite a few.
Yes.
But I know, having gone through the culling on the pension fund advisors and so on, by the time I got through reading 3,000 or 4,000, at least 2,000 pages of stuff, where I have some expertise, it really became white noise. It seems to me that we need some people with, one of the things I would hope our firm would do is do some assessment of that. I think, you and John Mailer and some others who have, already expressed, I think, a great deal of positive comments with regard to the RFP itself would have a benefit. I'm not sure that 9 of us reviewing them and trying to share our notes and saying, I scored this guy a 3 and somebody else a 5. I don't know.
I was thinking more as not so much in the actual scoring of the proposals. I mean, report backs and asking questions so that you can stay involved in the process, and also report back to the public.
Sure.
And that's really what I was referring to more than the actual scoring. And so the question is, those periodic report backs to the full council and to the public, how is that going to take place? Is it going to take...
I'm not really sure, because they sound very aggressive on the timeline, so I'm wondering if even the Human Services Committee meeting occurs frequent enough to keep up to date the public, or we're looking at special other meetings
I
that are
think
outside,
I'm presumably looking at some special meetings.
like what's going on with the town halls and everything.
But beyond that, getting to the rest of the department, I think it's up to you. There are issues that we could delve into more in each of the divisions. So you may want a more detailed report on the closure of the state hospital, and a report from staff on how the 40-some people who have been taken out of the state hospital and returned to some degree to the community, how are they doing? Where did they all end up? How are they doing? That sort of thing.
That's, when I talked to Catherine, it's still December 31st.
Correct,
Right, so-
for them to get out, but for us to get them out of the state hospital, but how are they adjusting in
To some of
their
the
new
homes and
places?
everything. Okay.
How is it going? Another one, Reverend Dowd referred to child welfare and the changing face of child welfare, and he's absolutely right. It is dramatically changing, with much less emphasis on long-term, high-end placements, which are called residential treatment facilities, or RTFs. We are dramatically getting away from that. As he stated, it's much more intensive short-term placement and then returning back home with really a deluge of supportive services. So that might be an interesting meeting to hear more about how child welfare is changing and will continue to change.
I think might be interesting to me is one thing to know that there are 727 homeless people in Northampton County. I don't really know what that means, except that if we could humanize that, what's the prototypical person? Give us a case study. Not certainly all names blanked out, but what happens with a family when husband can't get into 3rd Street Alliance for women and children, but the wife and 2 kids can. And
Right.
how do we pick up that slack, or
Right.
where are they, and are they sleeping under the bridge? Years ago, when we were looking at MH, and we had an MHMR, and looking at budget cuts, we had people who came to meetings and shared with us, their experiences and their frustrations and successes. I must admit, I relate better to people than I do to numbers. You get 1,700 phone calls a month is wonderful, but who are they and what are they like, and give me a snapshot of. I think that at least makes it, to me, more personal.
Yes.
If I were talking, when I was of Easton, I wouldn't say we've got 150 kids. I'd talk about Willie or Fred or Tom or Bill, and what they were when they came to us and what they were when they left us, and so on, because I think that's important. Otherwise, it becomes kind of let's process people through a system for us, and it's much easier to say, well, so we cut the budget 10%. So,
yeah, that would be great. we could put together some case studies.
And Tom's the chair, that's only my thought, so
No, thank you very much, Mr. Dowd. It's very good ideas, because I'm trying to figure out the times and dates in our head. I'm not sure if we have a December meeting or anything, and it's, even if we did, it's a little accelerated since it's towards
Yeah.
the beginning of the month. Might be something
September 9th
for,
at 4 p.m., right?
it is still on the schedule?
So thank you very much. It's been a great year. Any business?
And that's it? Champagne, I guess?
Certainly, if you wanted to do something like that for your January meeting, we could certainly arrange for some case studies to be developed on homelessness. And then if you'd like, that could be a theme for the year. We could do another meeting on the residents of the state hospital and do some case studies type of thing to humanize that. And we could do some child welfare case studies to humanize that. That could be a theme for...
A day in the life of somebody who works in CYF. What's a day in the life of somebody who works of a caseworker in CYF? What do they see? I remember we had one more on here years ago who was very concerned that caseworkers got cell phones and would call their kids to say, call their spouse, say, "I'll be home at 7 o'clock tonight," and wondered why that was a chargeable phone call. Be out there.
Yeah.
Make the visit. You'll know why it's important for them to have that.
Well, I have one suggestion as far as the January meeting, since that is when the Allentown State Hospital is closed. Maybe just a finalized summary as far as where do people go.
Sure.
I've been following along with the mental health and early intervention as far as some of the information, as far as they had a big plan and everything ahead of time, more like a review on how well did it work out, now that we're opportunity to look back.
That would be fine.
That would be good, something for January, because December, once again, it's earlier than everything, and you know how it is. They'll tend to want to run it up to the absolute end. And I'm trying to remember what state hospital that. There's some people that are absolutely will not. I've been informed will not be releasable into a group home or society
Correct.
or anything. They still require undergoing treatment.
Correct.
And I think that was anywhere from like 15 to 20 that were Northampton County residents, and I think they were going to Westfield or I can't remember.
Wernersville. It's outside of Reading.
Wernersville. See if that number changed or anything. Maybe.
Last I heard, it was going to be around 10.
Okay.
But it may have changed, because I do know now that I think about it, I do know they increased it because of some unusual circumstances. They did allow for some more.
Okay. And then I know that we were working with a third party, because a lot of the services are outsourced to some health facilities, to acquire a farm and a group home. I'm trying to remember where that was at, too, because it was kind of and it was going to absorb a lot of people, Northampton County residents that were coming from the state hospital as well.
Yeah, I think you're talking about the home in Lehigh Township.
Okay. It was Lehigh Township?
I believe so.
Excellent, because they kept talking about that. It was like a great dream, because it was a buffer, it was a very much outdoorsy kind of environment, it was very healthy, kind of.
I'm relatively certain it's Lehigh Township, but I'm not absolute on that one. So for January, we will do an update, a humanized update, not just numbers, on the closure of Allentown State Hospital.
Okay.
Okay?
I remember there when that place was full.
Is there what? Oh,
Yes.
Allentown State Hospital?
Yeah.
I wasn't there during that time. I've only been there the last couple of years for picking up patients for transport for hospitals.
Yeah. Well, then you remember that at the time, that was the state of the art. That's what we did with the mentally ill. We felt that that was the best option. Yeah.
If there's nothing else, anybody? I know the game ready from the audience is. But now, if there's nothing else, I want to thank very much Mr. Marcus for his participation. Everybody that's in attendance here, and make most of the adjourned meeting.
Sure. Thank you.